look at downtown St. Louis and the world-famous Arch. It is a beautiful night for baseball. We're at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, and this evening, here in game number 3, the Cardinals look for a sweep over the San Diego Padres. This series has been defined by pitching. Jaime Garcia in game 1, and last night the story of Adam Wainwright. He later would say it might be the best feeling he has ever had pitching. Now 3-1 against San Diego, ERA of .58. He would go the distance. An emotional Adam Wainwright afterwards as the Cardinals picked up a win in game number 2. Welcome to baseball, everyone. Along with Rick Horton, I'm Dan McLaughlin. Delighted to have you with us, and everybody's still talking about the job that Wainwright did last night. But as you know, it's a results-driven business. What have you done for me lately? So he's got to get ready for Roy Halladay on Sunday.
Yeah, you have to keep working, Dan. It doesn't just stop with what he did last night. But I think Adam Wainwright, while he's running here this afternoon, working out hard, he has an entirely different mindset. He knows now he has erased any doubts whether or not he can be a top elite pitcher again, and I think that's where the emotions came from.
Will that start carry over for the Cardinals tonight and Lance Lynn? He'll face a good old buddy of ours, and that's Jeff Suppan. Another friend of ours began his career back in the mid-90s, now working with the San Diego Padres. Mark Sweeney coming up next. We're back in St. Louis, and they've got that left-handed swing of the man down. There was also another guy that hit from the left side and made a career out of being a very good pinch hitter. He made his Major League debut with the St. Louis Cardinals. 14 years, second all-time in pinch hits. It's Mark Sweeney. He's downstairs with Jim Hayes.
Mark Sweeney goes from the field into the broadcast booth, where he works as an analyst for FS San Diego. And Mark, for you being back here in St. Louis, I would assume that's kind of special for you.
I love St. Louis. Always been one of my favorites. Came up as a rookie, special teams, special times, but the fans and the experience definitely trump everything I had in my career.
Speaking of special, you had a special niche as a pinch hitter, second all-time in career pinch hits, first in career pinch hit RBIs. I'm just curious, it's not something that everyone excels at. What do you think is the difference that made you so good at it?
Well, opportunity first. And you know, I was around here first with Mike Jorgensen and just trying to get into the big leagues and stay there. I didn't dream of being a pinch hitter, but you know, showing Tony that I could handle that job too as well, and how prepared Tony was, it really helped me set what I could do in the game itself. And pinch hitting, you had to be prepared, and I learned that from Tony and others. And I was just fortunate to be in the game and have a major league uniform on, so I really had to work my tail off to keep that.
You guys are dealing with injuries. The Cardinals are dealing with injuries as well. You get a close look at the Padres. So it seems that there's a lot of young talent on that ball club. How do you assess it?
Yeah, young talent. You know, I think the pitching is much you know, far ahead than the offense. The offense is challenged at this point, especially with some injuries. Not having Carlos Quentin yet to this point of the season has been difficult, because that's a presence in the lineup. And they've struggled, and they've never had somebody really get hot. And they've had some individual efforts, but nothing collectively.
Always a pleasure to talk with you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
This is Mark Sweeney. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at another former Cardinal, Jeff Suppan. Cardinal baseball straight ahead on Fox Sports Midwest.
The Cardinals face an old friend in the final game of the series, Jeff Suppan. He's 2-2 with an ERA at 3. He's not overpowering. Fastball in the mid-80s now, and just a 5-inning pitcher, but he knows how to get the job done, and he's got new life in San Diego. Cardinals going for the sweep here. Beautiful day in St. Louis. We'll have more on Fox Sports Midwest after this.
After 4 straight losses, St. Louis has 2 straight wins, and they'll battle behind one of the NL's best pitchers so far in Lance Lynn. The Busch faithful are hoping to see a sweep of San Diego tonight. First pitch coming up only on Fox Sports Midwest. Cardinals baseball on Fox Sports Midwest is brought to you by Budweiser. Great times are waiting. Designate a driver. by your Mid-America Chevy dealers, the #1 selling brand in St. Louis. Find us at stlchevy.com. By Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers, #1 for quality tires and expert auto service. And by Steak and Shake. Steak and Shake, just no equal. Beautiful night for baseball here in St. Louis. Glad you're with us as the Cardinals look for a sweep tonight. The Redbirds start play tonight, a half game in front of Cincinnati. The Reds have been very hot as of late. Cardinals looking for win number 25 tonight. Will Venable will lead it off, followed by Cameron Maben and then Yonder Alonso. Guzman, Headley, and Hundley. Perino, what a night he had in game 2. Then Cabrera and the pitcher Jeff Suppan will bat 9th. They will face the very tough right-hander so far in this 2012 campaign, and that's Lance Lynn.
And Dan, a tough act to follow with what Wainwright did here last night, a complete game shutout. He was phenomenal. Lance Lynn won his first 6 starts and has really been as steady as anybody in the National League with his numbers. 9 hits in his last outing, a little bit of a blip for him, but he's really kept his team in every one of his starts.
San Diego at 16 and 28. Holiday, Schumacher, and Beltran in the outfield. Around the Horn brought to you by Dobbs. David Freese back in there at 3rd. And behind the plate tonight for St. Louis, yet again, catcher, Gold Glover, Yadier Molina. The flexibility of Skip Schumacher allowing him to play center field tonight. Maybe finishes up in right, left, second, who knows.
I think he's a tough guy to keep out of the lineup right now. I mean, he's one of the kind of most consistent hitters, and with John Jay out of the lineup, you know, I'd like to see Skip play a little bit more than he has been.
John Jay, they're expecting him back on May 31st. Alan Craig would be the first week of June. And the bad news coming to the ballpark today was the news on Matt Carpenter. And he is out with a sore side. And he had been swinging a hot bat at .370 since May 9th. And the Cardinals then had to make a move, and they've done that.
Yeah, they bring up Stephen Hill. Carpenter's been saying that he really just has a kind of a mild oblique strain. He doesn't really have a lot of pain with it. But having had that injury and knowing many people who've had it, it doesn't always hurt a lot until you do something baseball related. So it's going to be a while for him. And here are some of the delisted Cardinals. Jay, McClellan, Craig, Berkman, and Carpenter all in a bunch, losing a lot of time. It's really a challenging period for St. Louis.
Kyle McClellan saying that he will not need surgery, so that's good news for Kyle. He saw Dr. James Andrews, and remember, Kyle already had Tommy John surgery back in 2005 as a minor leaguer. Will Venable looks at a strike, and we're underway here in St. Louis. Venable is batting .256 with 2 home runs, and he's driven in 6. And he drives us out to right. Beltran is back. He looks up, and it's 1-0 San Diego. Home run number 3 for Will Venable, and that's how we start the night. And his 7th RBI. 1-0. Friars on top.
And that is just home run number 17 on the season for San Diego. Cardinals have 54 home runs, so this is an odd way for this game to begin. Lance Lynn is around the plate, so you'd think long term he'd be a guy to give up some home runs because he'll challenge guys. And Venable just jumps on that pitch early on to give the Padres the 1-0 lead.
And I'm sure his hitting coach can appreciate that. That's Phil Plantier, who's the 4th hitting coach that Venable has had in his time in San Diego. A lot of turnover because they're trying to figure out how to get an offense to produce in that ballpark. Maben with a base hit up the middle, and the first 2 have reached.
The pitcher comes out thinking every game he's going to throw a perfect game, and not only does he not have the perfect game, no hitter, doesn't have a shutout. Now you just have to adjust and say, I'm going to win this game 5-1, 6-1. And you have to make those quick adjustments mentally, because this is not obviously plan A for Lance Lynn.
You mentioned the home runs. They are few and far between this year for San Diego, as Adam Wainwright was the story last night. This team that he saw is batting .218 at the start of play. Collectively, Yonder Alonso is the hitter with a runner at first. And so while some may say with Wainwright's performance, yeah, it was fine, he goes the distance, but it was the Padres. They're only hitting .218. I think you and I have a little different look at that.
Yeah, the 218 and they're big leaguers.
Right.
And so they're still guys that can hurt you. And what we saw from Wainwright was a good fastball that we have not seen, a little more life. You know, he says, Dan, that he discovered a slightly lower arm angle in his last bullpen. And that's actually the same discovery he had last year at one point in the season when he started to take off. So maybe the memory kind of kicked in and he said maybe I should be dropping just a bit, and certainly the results were outstanding.
Molina was talking about the fastball after the game last night. He threw that inside as Maben is going. They pitch out, throw to second, and he is out. Yanni does it again, gunning down the runner, Cameron Maben.
Well, this stolen base comes on a one-strike pitch. There's the throw to second on the pitch out, and I've got to believe the Cardinals had the signs right there. That is not a classic steal situation, although Maben at 13 for 14 is really always in steal mode. But when the count is not in the hitter's favor, you'd think maybe that's not the time to go. I got to believe the Cardinals stole the sign.
Freeze hustling after it, and it's out of play.
Some of the old school coaches were unbelievable, Dan, at stealing signs. I mean, you watch Oquendo on a typical day and he goes through his gyrations and you think, how in the world can you figure out what the hit and run is or what the bunt is? But the kind of the old school coaches just study that and figure out how to steal that sign and know what's coming.
And you would think maybe more now than ever because of video that you'd have more of that. We see a lot of times the tipping of the pitches is more prevalent now because of video, but maybe signs as well.
No question.
The 2-2 pitch to Alonso. Looks at a ball inside. Yonder Alonso is a doubles machine right now. 7 for his last 17. He was hitting 196 on April 25th. We asked him before the game, what did you change? He said, not a thing. He said, I can hit. Just got to grind it out. And he looks at a ball a little bit low. So the first 3 have reached in this lineup. And it brings in Guzman. Homered the other night. Batting .257. One out and a runner at first, and the pitch is taken for a strike. Lance Lynn 6-1 with a 2.31 ERA. Started out with the 6 straight wins. ERA was under 2. There's the curveball. In his last 2 starts, ERA has jumped over 5 as he took a loss. Last start was a 6-5 loss in Los Angeles. 6 innings, 4 runs, and 9 hits.
Still 5th in the National League in opponents' batting average against, Dan. That's a pretty important stat, especially for a guy that throws strikes. Teams batting just 198 against Lance Lynn, and he's right up there with Lilly, Beachy, Kershaw. So guys having good years.
Rick, we mentioned coming into the series that the defense wasn't overly sharp on the road trip, but last night with Wainwright, the way that he was effective on the mound, and certainly the defense of Rafael Furcal, big difference in this series.
Goes together, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Pitching and defense.
1-2 pitch. Reaching for it. And that'll find the seats out of play. Cardinals have had their share of injuries. So has San Diego with 13 players on the DL, one time or another. And big names in their lineup. And did it hit him? Yes, it did. So he's hit by the pitch. Molina getting an explanation here as the umpire was trying to explain his call. That's Bob Davidson.
There's always a question, does this hit off the knob of the bat? But it does look like it catches his right elbow. And a little bit too much movement inside, just darted in on Guzman.
Well, that's 4 straight that have reached against Lance Lynn here in the first inning to start the game. The switch hitting Chase Headley. Headley's talked about the fact that he uses his mind as a way to try to get over the hump. He said, I'm not the most gifted guy, but the mental aspect is where I have to get an edge. Not as gifted physically. He was valedictorian at his high school. Began his college career at Pacific, then transferred to Tennessee. And he's been dealing with a lower back issue. That's why we didn't see him last night. Had started 42 of 43 games this year for the Padres.
So this team has 2 valedictorians, a guy that went to Berkeley and a guy that went to Princeton.
You got it.
Probably a lot more reading going on their flights than most major league teams, I would guess.
Last time I checked, though, you have to be able to hit, run, and throw in this league.
Part of it. Reading doesn't really come into it, does it?
No. Every teacher right now is ready to strangle us, I think, because of our comments.
Well, where the reading comes into play is when you can no longer hit, run, and throw.
That's right. You better be able to do something.
Exactly right.
Runners at first and second. Outfield is straight away. And this is hit into right center field. That ball will get down. A run will score on a 2-1 pitch. Headley makes it 2-0 San Diego. And right now, Cardinals need to settle down Lance Lynn, and Derek Lilliquist is making the move from the dugout to the mound. We talked about it last 2 starts, and Lance Lynn has been struggling. It's part of our Toyota keys to the game. Why has he struggled, do you think, Rick?
Well, first six starts he won, and the first 7 starts he was 6-0, and I just think he's gone away from his fastball a little bit too much. We've seen a lot of breaking balls early in this game already, and that's really not his best pitch. He does have a good changeup. His breaking ball is serviceable, but I don't think his fastball has been at quite the zip on it that it did the first 6 starts. And sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. But the difference maker for Lance Lynn is his fastball with some hop. He can let you know it's coming, and he'll still get away with that because of the movement and the life that he has on his good fastball.
His fastball average this year has been over 92 miles an hour, just shy of 93. So he throws plenty hard. We saw him do that the back end of the bullpen last year for Tony La Russa.
And he's at 91, 92 here tonight.
If you're wondering, he's not eligible for Rookie of the Year. He threw too many innings, 34 2/3 last year. With the exception of 2 starts, all his appearances, 16 as a reliever. That catches the corner. 1 ball, 1 strike on Nick Hundley. A big guy, 6'5", 250 pounds. Out of Brownsburg, Indiana. 1-1 pitch from Lynn. Nice play by Adams. Out at second, and Lynn is late getting to the bag at first. A run will score, and it's 3-0 Padres.
Nice play by Matt Adams, and Lance Lynn never really gets a good jump off the mound. Adams does the right thing because this is a ball you can get a double play on. It's hit so hard, but Lance Lynn does not make the initial reaction and move. He kind of waits, and then by the time he gets there, Furcal has nobody to throw it to. The ball pulled Adams too far off the bag for him to be able to make that throw and then come back to the bag. So really a mental lapse for Lance Lynn.
Curveball and a strike to Perino. How about the job he's done in this series with the glove? Outstanding. 3 different times last night he was tested at third and came up with very good plays.
We've also seen him play shortstop, but he's a better third baseman. At least he has been in this series.
out of Brockport, New York. Late August last year, made his major league debut. A 26th round selection back in 2007. At the knees and a strike.
So for folks that may have thought that the Adam Wainwright job last night was insignificant, basically the same lineup, same Padres today. They're still big leaguers.
Significant from the Cardinals' perspective, team-wide, just a pick-me-up, but both he and Garcia, what they've done going deeper into games and saving the bullpen too. Garcia very good in game 1, and it was the first time Cardinals starter had gone at least 7 innings when Jaime did that the other night. First time since May 9th. 1-2 pitch by Lance Lynn. Strikeout on the outside corner. His first strikeout of the night. Padres put up 3. Soup to the mound. Rough start to the night for Lance Lynn. 3 hits, a home run, 3 runs. And we move to the home half of the first. A look at the lineup. Furcal leads it off, and then Schumacher and Holiday. Beltran, Freese, Molina, Adams, Green, and Lynn. Little intrigue here tonight as our old buddy Jeff Suppan is back in the big leagues. Congratulations to Jeff on that feat. Let's see what he still has left. Suppan is 2-2 with an ERA of 3 in 21 innings this year.
Even when he was with the Cardinals the last time, he still was not a 90-mile-an-hour guy. He was a 5 or 6 inning pitcher, and that's really what he is now for San Diego. But he's always been one of those consistent guys that'll throw 5 innings, give up a couple of runs, and that could be enough for his club if he has one of those kind of games. Not overpowering, and he likes to really take command of the game in terms of its pacing. Watch for when guys get on base, Soup will go into super slow-mo and try to take the energy out of the other team's offense.
Rafael Furcal, where would the Cardinals be without Furcal and what he has delivered this year? He has been sensational as the Cardinals leadoff man.
Big strike zone early on will probably help Jeff Suppan, and he'll probably use that to his advantage.
Right there trying to go after that outside portion of the plate after the previous pitch was called a strike. That's what veterans do.
The more veteran the pitcher, the better they are at learning what the strike zone is on that particular night and taking advantage of it.
Key for the Cardinals is making sure that Furcal stays healthy. Has not played a full year since 2009. And remember, last year in 50 games, surprisingly, he hit 7 home runs. And Mike Matheny went to Rafael spring training, said, we want you to be more of a line drive guy. Focus on the line drives. He's done that and played very, very well. Only 2 errors coming into play. Little bloop into right, and it drops in for a hit. Furcal is aboard. He'll take it. The defense behind Suppan tonight: Guzman, Mabin, and Venable in the outfield. Headley, Perino, Cabrera, and Alonso along the infield. Huntley behind the plate. Around the Horn all season long is presented by Dodge. Good buddies right here, Jeff Suppan and Skip Schumacher. Part of the 2006 World Championship Club. Knowing Soup like we do, and Rick, he's throwing right now, as you mentioned, mid-80s. He'll top out 87, maybe 88. Slows the game down with a runner on, as you mentioned, but Cardinals know him so well. Would this be a guy that you want to run against?
Yeah, I think one of the things you can do more against Suppan than other pitchers is you can do a lot of hit and running against him too, because he's going to be around the plate, number one, and he's not a swing and miss guy at all. Another reason I like David Freese in the lineup here tonight.
That's driven into center field. Maven on the move, and he can't get it. for Kyle. He was at second, on his way to third. They'll wave him in for Kyle will score, and the Cardinals get on the board thanks to Skip Schumacher. Off the glove of Maben in center, and it's 3-1. Well, Rick, if Soup is going to have success, just about everything has to go right. Plays have to be made.
And two plays don't go his way. A bloop single, and then Maben almost comes up with this. He glides so well. I was sure he was going to make this play. He just seemed to have a beat on this ball, but almost went behind his head a bit, and the route was off just a tad. So Suppan not getting the breaks he needs to win.
Matt Holliday, his 13th multi-hit game last night. And he hits a rocket to short. Matt comes in with arguably the best numbers of anybody in this lineup against Soup.
And that's what Soup needs. The one pitch out, line drive at somebody. And I applaud Jeff Suppan, Dan, for just continuing to want to play the game that he loves. I think there's sentiment among fans at times, and even among players, that say, you know, why not just give the young kids a chance? That's what they'll say in the clubhouse. You know, why doesn't the old guy just move on and give a young kid a chance? But he loves playing. He's got something to offer his teammates. He's got something to offer the game, and as long as he is competitively better than the other guy, why not?
Spent the entire season a year ago at AAA. He was in the Royals organization. High fly ball, right center. Maben makes the catch. Schumacher will tag up from second to third.
Talk about guys that are not giving young guys a chance to pitch. We got a whole bunch of them. 3 of them actually starting tonight. Bennett, Millwood, and Suppan all with the starts. But Moyer, 25 years of age. Livan Hernandez just moved to the bullpen. But that's 5 pitchers in baseball with 16 or more years. And look at the number of starts collectively with those 5 guys.
Well, good to see that David Freese back in the lineup. David was hitless on the previous homestand. He had one very good game against the Giants on the recent road trip, and then hitless outside of that. They've talked about his hips opening up a little too much, pulling off of pitches, and that's something they've been focused on and working on here the last couple of days.
And again, I like him getting the start against Suppan after the 2 mental days off to work on his swing, as well as maybe just to work on how he is getting along mentally. But Suppan is not a swing and miss guy, and Freese was doing a lot of swinging and missing on this last road trip.
0-1 pitch. It's always interesting to see where an outfield may play, and the book on David Freese would be you better shade him to the opposite way because of his power in that direction. But tonight it may be a little different because Suppan, he isn't throwing low 90s. He isn't throwing mid 90s. He's throwing low to mid 80s right now. So you'd figure a right-hander is going to pull it.
No question.
Strike 2.
The other factor that always comes into play for outfielders is which way do they feel more comfortable running, to their left or to their right. There's a lot of outfielders that see the ball better, get better jumps one way or the other, and that could be the case with Maben. And he almost ran down that ball that Schumacher hit right over his head. That ball was crushed by Skip. Maben very smooth in the outfield, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Long strides. They feel he will be a Gold Glover at some point in his career. And with the spacious Petco Park, he might be just the perfect guy to have in center field. Two balls and 2 strikes on David Freese. David was a 9th round pick of the San Diego Padres. The 2-2.
Still seems a little jumpy at the plate. A couple of base hits will fix that.
David 3 for his last 34 coming into play tonight. Had 4 strikeouts on Sunday. Shoots it down the right field line and foul. At one point his average was up to 312. And it's dipped to 259. That's since May 9th. Freese represents the tying run here in the first inning. Another 3-2 pitch. Freese with a base hit in the left. Boy, he needed that. Makes it 3-2. Schumacher scores. Nicely done by David Freese with RBI number 30.
You can't think yourself out of a slump. You have to swing your way out. This ball middle in, off the plate even. And David didn't exactly crush that ball, but he has to feel very relieved right now.
Rick, when you were facing a former teammate that was a catcher of yours when you were on the mound, what was it like when he was at the plate? Did you feel that he knew you better than anybody else, like Yadi might know Soup?
And depending upon how smart the catcher was, yes. I mean, especially the guys that would think along with you at a deep level. I think Mike LaValliere probably the smartest catcher that I'd been around in terms of knowing me. And so when I pitch against Mike LaValliere, I know that he knew what I was thinking and what pitches I was going to throw. And you kind of had that little cat and mouse game going on. And I think it depends on the relationship and how tight you were with that teammate, what it's like to pitch against him. Certainly Yadi would be in that class of very smart catchers.
1-0 pitch. Suppan to Molina. You go back to the 2006 National League Championship Series and the role that Jeff Suppan played as he started Game 7. The home run that was hit by Yadier Molina to give the Cardinals the lead. And then eventually they held on and had the guts to call the curveball. Wainwright striking out Carlos Beltran. That's a base hit into right. Just guiding it into right field. Freese will stop at second. And that's 4 hits against Jeff Suppan here in the first.
Yadier Molina knows how to drive the ball the other way, and even Suppan not throwing that hard, but that pitch is away. A little cutter away. And I would say that this is a conversation on the mound right now, Dan, that is filled with gravitas.
Is that the Jeff Suppan word of the day?
That is the word he texted me last night and wanted me to use during the telecast. I'm not sure he wanted me to use it in this particular situation, describing the seriousness of speech or conduct that's going on the mound right now. But for years, with Jeff Suppan was with the Cardinals, we would have our Suppan word of the day every Sunday that he would provide. And he was always delighted to know that teachers around the Cardinal viewing area would use that on vocabulary tests for their children, which I thought was a pretty neat thing.
Matt Adams is 2 for 10. 2 hits were on Sunday night. And Soup, no matter how hot it is, always with the long sleeves, the compression sleeves, if you will. Familiar sight in St. Louis, and doing that here this evening. One-0 pitch to Adams. We've seen a lot of changeups early on against Matt Adams, haven't we?
Yeah, well, Volquez threw a bunch of them, but that's his best pitch. But you can tell Jeff Suppan was watching. Soup's always had that changeup that's kind of like a forkball changeup. He just kind of splits his fingers, and not sure whether it's a forkball or a changeup. He kind of calls it something in between. And I think that's what he threw there to Adams. We might see another.
1-1 pitch. Adams drives it into right. This game is tied. Here comes David Freese. It's 3-3. Adams delivers here in the bottom of the first. first RBI in the big leagues for Matt Adams, and many more to come.
Jeff Suppan didn't get the breaks with the first 2 batters, and the Cardinals have cashed in with 3 2-out hits. Freese, Molina, and now Matt Adams.
It's 5 base hits for the Redbirds and activity already in the Padres bullpen. Tyler Green with one of the biggest hits of the year the other night thus far. And if you're a championship team, you go back to special moments. We had one last night with Wainwright. And I think you'd have to say in game 1, the home run that Green hits is right there too.
No question. I still can picture his emotions as he was rounding first base and shaking the hand of Chris Maloney, the Cardinal first base coach. I mean, it was a pretty emotional moment for him and for his teammates.
0-1 pitch by Soup. Strike.
And I think largely because of how much the team had struggled in San Francisco the last day and then on in Los Angeles.
Ironically enough, Jeff Suppan returns to the big leagues back on the 2nd of May, and he faced the Brewers, a place that gave him a big contract. Did not perform up to that deal, and a hanger is drilled out to left, and the catch is made. Bat rack right now is shaking. We're tied up. It's 3-3. Something in common, guys, here at the ballpark. Complete game shutouts against San Diego. A 2-hitter for my partner tonight, Rick Horton, with that grimacing look towards the plate as he delivered that 82-mile-an-hour fastball. Saw Wainwright last night, and Garcia did it a season ago. So nearly the no-hitter for Rick Horton. 9 innings, couple of hits. And he walked 2 and he struck out 5. I believe that's Tony Gwynn right there. The Wizard turning the double play. Mike Jorgensen, who's still in the organization at first base. The complete game for Rick Horton against the San Diego Padres. Everett Cabrera on a hop to second. 1 away. And it brings in Jeff Suppan. We talked a little bit about Suppan and what a nice story this is as he receives a round of applause. 2 stints in St. Louis. AAA Kansas City, based in Omaha. He lived in the Marriott Hotel last year. Hadn't missed a major league season since all the way back in 1998. Wasn't picked up or called up by anybody. The average age of his teammates last year, 24, and his pitching coach is a former teammate from 10 years ago, Doug Henry. And I know he's been asked an awful lot, why do this? And he says, I still burn to compete. I don't need the money.
Wait a minute.
This is what I want to do.
I played with Doug Henry.
Then you should make a comeback.
No, thank you.
2 away. You are breathing, right?
Yeah, I'm left-handed.
Heartbeat, left-handed.
Yeah, but 63 miles an hour is not nearly enough.
Well, you never know. You know, you go back out there if you just need to get that one lefty.
Well, if the lefty is 55 years of age, I got a good chance.
So you are just nasty in fantasy camp.
Yeah, in fantasy camp, that's my. Those are my new.
And that consists
my new big
of
leagues.
Guys that never played the game.
Yeah, doctors and lawyers and healthcare professionals.
And you go high and tight on some of those healthcare professionals. You'd like to chin music, you know.
Keep them honest. They want to know what the game's really like. We show them.
I went out and had a chance to watch you play. Your team. You were not on the mound at that particular time, but Cal was pitching, Cal Eldred. And Todd Worrell, your former teammate. And I'm telling you right now, they're throwing harder than Jeff Suppan maybe tonight.
No question. mid-80s. They were throwing mid-80s, probably about the same, I would say.
1-1 pitch, a liner, and passed for a foul into center field. So Venable, who homered on the second pitch of the game, is now 2 for 2. And speaking of former players, they're part of the kids clinics, boys and girls ages 7 to 13, and Scott Terry was with us the other night telling us about these. They do a great job with them, and they're based pretty much on every Tuesday and Thursday throughout the summer. And just find out about the location near you throughout the Metro St. Louis area, cardinals.com/clinics.
They're outstanding camps. They have 3 or 4 former Cardinals at each one of those camps, and they really try to do them all around St. Louis.
Oh, heads up play by Molina. He wanted to keep that fair. And Maben is gunned down at first. Yachty made sure that stayed in play for the out. Oh, yeah. Nice. The dance moves. Move like Jagger.
I know
Come
that
on,
song.
Rick.
I know that song. They like runs. Plenty of them so far. 3-3 in the early going. Jeff Suppan, very important inning for him to try to set a new norm. Lance Lynn was able to do that at the top of the second inning, and we'll see if Soup can do that. Faces 9-1-2.
Our production meeting tonight, Rick, Danny Martinez, myself, and Dan Hyatt, we were all talking about leisure suits.
Yes, we were.
You started breaking into Saturday Night Fever. So I know you have the dancing in your blood tonight. You can appreciate that.
Oh, I no longer have those leisure suits.
You can tie in anything you want. You know, the kids dancing to leisure suits. And
yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Saturday Night Fever. 0-2 here on Lance Lynn.
Had the platform shoes too, by the way.
Absolutely. Here's the 0-2 to Lance Lynn. Jeff Suppan, the 37-year-old, in his second-round selection all the way back in 1993 by the Boston Red Sox at that time. And his career has taken him all across the big leagues. The 1-2 pitch, and Lynn strikes out. First strikeout for Lance Lynn, and this weekend is loaded with promotions, and that's the Dancers. Team Fredbird sporting the U.S. Cellular cap that you can get on Saturday night. U.S. Cellular adult cap. First 25,000 fans ages 16 and older. So that's a look at the cap that you have a chance to pick up on Saturday. That's Jaime Garcia against Kyle Kendrick on Saturday. Very good pitching matchups all weekend long. We talked about it in the open. Sunday, maybe the best on paper with Wainwright and Roy Halladay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the Phillies play. They are not off to a very good start, just a couple of games under 500, but in last place in the East. But I would not count them out as the team to beat.
Missing Chase Utley, missing Ryan Howard.
They're going to catch the Mets. I believe they're going to catch Miami. 5 games behind Washington. Of course, we're only just over a quarter of the way through the season. I just think their pitching's too good.
There's a drive into right field, but the catch is made. Sinking liner to Venable off the bat of Furcal, and there's 2 away. I wonder what was going through the mind of Skip Schumacher last night watching his buddy Adam Wainwright. Those two are about as tight as you can get. And Wainwright is trying to close out that complete game, and we all know what he's been through to get to that point. A double and an RBI, first time up for Skip. He had been averaging 17 pitches per inning. The walks had been high. Talking about Wainwright, and then last night it took 111, and both Derek Lilliquist along with Mike Matheny going into that 9th inning, as Adam would tell us in the post-game interview in which he was very emotional. He said You've got 15 pitches. Get it done. And he knew that that final batter, which he got the ground out to for Kyle, that would be it one way or another. Walk, hit, out, but he's coming out.
I found it very interesting that Adam divulged that right away, because I don't remember ever hearing a manager telling a pitcher that, but I like that. I mean, basically we're saying we're going to give you a chance to go 9. We don't really want to, but we're going to give you that chance, but you've got to do it in 15 pitches or you're out. I just think that puts the burden on Wainwright to not overthrow, to just try to get some outs as quickly as possible, which he should be doing in the 9th inning of the game. And so I like that philosophy quite a bit.
First 9-inning game since early August of 2010 for Adam Wainwright. And he said it may have been the best feeling he had ever had pitching in a baseball game. And that's just an amazing statement from a guy that's won 20 games. He closed out 3 different series, including the World Series in 2006. I mean, think about that statement. I mean, you're at the highest of the highs in baseball. The dream of any kid to be on the mound in the final out of a World Series, and he's saying last night may have topped that for him personally.
Well, it just shows that there was something in the back of his mind where there was some doubt that he was trying to overcome by his work ethic and by his competitiveness. That little doubt in the back of his mind that said, maybe I'll never be that guy again. And I think he erased that little doubt, and now he can move forward. He's still going to have games where he's not as good as he was last night, but the doubt, I think, will be gone.
That fastball made the curveball all that much better. In on the lefties, a few of the cutters that broke bats, he was much better.
No question. I think that's the key to his stuff, was the way he used his fastball, and I'm including the cutter in the fastball conversation here, but he established that inside part of the plate, and then the curveball did a lot more damage because of it.
Matt Holliday hit a screamer to short first time up, lined out, 0 for 1 tonight. We talked about for Colin, his defense not to be overlooked, the double play that Holliday started with a catch sliding in shallow left. Very good play.
Adam brought it up, and I found the interview that he did with you just spectacular, Dan. Your questions about the emotions, and then he just continued to be emotional and just kind of let everybody know he understands he's talking to Cardinal Nation when he does that, and he wants them to know that this is a big relief for me, and thank you. I think there were thank yous in that unsaid.
I do too.
But I just thought that was spectacular, your conversation with him.
Well, and the thing that, and I appreciate that, and we appreciate Adam knowing that he was emotional that time coming on the air. And you hit it on the head, Rick. He knows he's going out to the fans, not just in St. Louis, but across the Midwest, and for some across the country that pick us up. And it's more than just a telecast for the fans here in St. Louis. It goes everywhere. And so it's wonderful when you hear a professional athlete that's made a lot of money, and Adam has, and he will continue to do so, where you take that out of the equation and just think about the human element of what the guy's been through to get back to this point. And then to say, by the way, I want to thank you to the fans for your support. We appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Had a chance to meet Adam's mom in his hometown at his golf tournament this year. And of course, I've known his wife, Jenny, and met his brother as well. And you can just imagine that there were plenty of conversations over the last 3 to 6 months, private conversations with Adam and those closest to him, where he would be honest and say, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this again. I don't know if it's going to come back. It doesn't feel quite right, and I'm not sure I can be as excellent as I was, and it's just so good to see him get back to that level again, because the Cardinals really need him to be that guy with Chris Carpenter out.
The 3-1 is tapped foul.
You can thank Garcia and Loesch and Lynn, Westbrook for all that they've done, but they still need Adam Wainwright.
Yeah, this team, you know, when you looked at it on paper coming into the season, the things that you looked at was Carpenter and Wainwright being 1 and 2 more than likely in your rotation, and saying those guys have to be what they've been in the past for us to get over the hump of losing an Albert Pujols. Can Beltran stay healthy? Can Furcal be the player we expect him to be? All those things need to happen. The 3-2 runner goes, and it's taken high. So Suppan was able to get the first 2 with a strikeout of Lynn. Furcal then lined out to right. And he's asking for trouble here. Back-to-back walks, and it brings in Beltran.
Very dangerous at bat right here for Jeff Suppan. Trying to get on the same page with his catcher. They seem to be much more congenial than the battery we saw here in game 2. Edson Volquez and Baker behind the plate had some issues and some moments.
And Rick, I had a lot of fans today asking me about that. They said, and I'm going to ask you, how does that happen? You know, where a pitcher doesn't even look at his catcher and trying to get on the same page.
Well, there really is no excuse for that.
Yeah.
It happens because people are people. Doesn't mean he can't learn, but he hadn't fully learned it yet. Dusty Baker sent him to the minor leagues because of it when he was pitching pretty well. Just to tell him that's not how you play at this level. And I think at that time it had more to do with the defense behind him when he was with Cincinnati than it was with the relationship with the catcher there.
Beltran hits it down the right field line and pulls it foul.
And for those that didn't see the game, Dan, there was just some very demonstrative negative gestures from the pitcher towards his catcher, turned his back on him. And when Baker came out to the mound to talk to him, he wouldn't even look at him. Basically, the infielders were translating for him, trying to get him calmed down, and he just would have nothing of it. There's two that are getting along.
One has no choice. Here's a 1-1 pitch. See, now I've been there. I holding the kid there like that, and I'm saying, where is my wife?
Think that smile was fake?
And I would assume you've been there too.
Oh yeah, it's been longer ago.
Inside, and it's 2-2 on Beltran.
Just catches the inside corner, up and in. Again, the wide strike zone. Soup trying to take advantage of that. Still a dangerous pitch here. The power of Beltran. Carlos Dan has 13 home runs. The Padres have 17.
And Soup, knowing the importance of this pitch, wants to get on the same page. And this is where the Cardinals lineup against a guy like Suppan can be very, very tough, because Soup will pick. And many times Beltran, a healthy Berkman, those guys don't chase baseballs out of the zone.
Yeah, and you've got to pitch to somebody.
Yeah. A 3-2 pitch to Beltran. Just got a piece. Rick, some players will tell you in this spot, runners at first and second, that the runner from second, they don't mind from a hitter's perspective seeing him go. It's the one from first that gets in the background and the vision. Sometimes you won't see those guys take off as hard trying to stay back and out of the vision.
Yeah, you're better off trying not to look at him, but easier said than done.
The 3-2 pitch again. Beltran, a ground ball to first. And the Cardinals will strand two. Injuries have piled up. The most recent injury to that of Matt Carpenter, and they have made a roster move concerning that. But maybe the biggest injury, Jim Hayes, as we find you up in the seats, is that of Lance Berkman. Right knee surgery coming up in Houston, it sounds like.
Yeah, tomorrow morning he'll have that surgery on the injured knee. It was supposed to be surgery scheduled for Colorado, but Lance apparently feels more comfortable with the doctor in Houston. According to Cardinals GM John Mozeliak, they'll go in, they'll take care of the meniscus issue, and they'll also look for ACL damage. If they find that ACL damage, Dan, they'll take care of it right then and there, but they're hoping for the best.
And that's a base hit by Alonso into right. By the way, there is an updated story, Jim, at FoxSportsMidwest.com. FoxSportsMidwest.com. A reporter that we have on our staff was able to get a hold of Lance Berkman, and one of the things that's brought up in that report, and go ahead and read that if you have a chance, updated quotes from Berkman, but the idea is, would he say that this is it if they find further damage? Would he retire? What's your impression that the Cardinals have at this point on that subject?
Well, the Cardinals' approach is wait and see. They would rather hope for the best and deal with the consequences if it doesn't turn out that way later on. I know it's on Berkman's mind, and he talked about what it means for him if it is a torn ACL. But talking to people close to Berkman, even if it is a torn ACL, they say he probably wants to continue playing baseball, although he understands it might not be in St. Louis.
All right, Jim, thanks. And Ricky, if you look at it, following the base hit, now it's Guzman. Where would Lance Berkman fit in? Knock on wood, he's healthy and comes back next year in St. Louis. It's going to be tough. You have Matt Adams at first. Beltran is under contract for another year. A young center fielder in Jay. Holiday long-term in left.
Well, I think Lance Berkman has done so much for this organization, at least he did last year, and really beyond that with what he does in the clubhouse and on the bench as well. I think Lance is going to be the one to make that decision. He will know whether he fits somewhere or not, and whether or not he wants to pay the price to work out as hard as he has to do in the offseason just to get ready to play. I mean, that's something that, you know, he talks about. If you really get him engaged in that conversation, it's a hard workout just to get ready to play opening day. He's got to do a little more than everybody else does. So I think he'll make that decision himself.
It's the second hitter that Lynn has hit tonight. Breaking ball that gets away, and it's the second time it's Guzman. Well, you talked about it. What's given Lance Lynn some success this year has been his fastball, and at times he just doesn't have a feel, it looks like, of the breaking ball, and that one got away from him.
Yeah, breaking ball is not his best pitch. Serviceable, but the fastball is still king for him.
Chase Headley much better on the road in his career. A 27-year-old from Fountain, Colorado, and a second-round pick in 2005. Key point in the game in game one of this series was his strikeout against Mitchell Boggs, and that's been overlooked with Garcia and Wainwright. Seeing Boggs back on track the other night.
When he's good, he's very good.
Headley part of the group with Kevin Kuzmanoff and Sean Burrows, trying to establish themselves as the everyday third baseman in San Diego. David Freese at one point was thought of in that group, but was in the minor leagues. So San Diego made the deal, pulled the trigger to pick up Edmonds, and David Freese winds up in St. Louis.
45 strikeouts already this season for Headley.
He's Padres minor league player of the year in 2007. Switch hitter, so some versatility, and they're trying to get his bat in the lineup even a couple of years ago by trying him in the outfield, but he will tell you he's best suited at third base. And a swing and a miss. He strikes out. Just to further your point, Ricky struck out 92 times last year, only hit 4 home runs, and missed nearly 40 games.
And really was late on that high delivery from Lance Lynn. And what I think Lynn may be rediscovering here, at least he did in that at-bat, is Lance has got a couple of different fastballs, Dan. He's got the 2-seamer that he keeps down in the zone, but that 4-seamer is really hard to catch up with, and that's really been a big pitch for him. So elevating, I think, and then going down low, going back and forth with that, I think is what he has to do, using primarily that fastball. And there's another good one. All of a sudden he's back to 94, where he started this game around 91.
Now it's Nick Hundley, product, played for the Arizona Wildcats and a second-round pick in 2005. And Bud Black has said before that he tries to get to know his players, and he'll just go up and say, well, tell me about your college experience. And so Black asked
about famous Arizona alumni that have made it to the big leagues, and he said first and foremost, well, it's JT Snow. And Bud said, well, yeah, that's not bad, but you forgot a guy that's been really good here in San Diego, but he was a shortstop. And he's scratching his head. He said, I don't know what you're talking about, Skip. He said, well, by the way, he's also one of the greatest closers ever in Trevor Hoffman. And people forget that Hoffman was an infielder and then converted to being a pitcher, then eventually redefined himself a couple of different times with the various changeups that he had.
And he made a living out of throwing the ball slow, didn't he?
Yes, he did. A 2-1 pitch here by Lynn. Chance at 2. He hesitates, though, out at second. And Rick, you can talk a little bit about this, where you have a situation where if the ball's hit back to me and you're Lance Lynn, before that at bat, you know who you're going to.
Yeah, one of the things you do, you turn around and you talk to your infielder and say, who is it on a double play? Is it you and me, Tyler? Is it you and me, Raphael? Well, it looked like it's both of them. And that confuses Lynn, and all that does is keep the Cardinals from having an inning-ending double play. Both players break to the bag. Now, either Furcal or Tyler Green is at fault right there. Lance Lynn was just trying to be careful. He may have known who he was supposed to throw to, but the other guy covering confused him. We'll blame it on the infielders.
I knew you would go that direction. Couldn't be a pitcher's fault.
I believe they would accept the blame on that.
Perino, with runners at the corners, struck out his first time up.
Tyler does not have quite as much experience at second base. The other issue there is he's probably going for that ball, Dan. That ball was hit to the left of Lance Lynn, and if he doesn't snag that ball, Green's got to get it. So he's going towards second base anyway, and maybe he just didn't peel off enough. That's certainly a possibility, that he was just in the area because he was trying to help out his pitcher.
Two and one. Middle infield right now, really a sore spot for Bud Black. Trying to find consistency. They had Jason Bartlett as their shortstop. He's hurt. They just released Orlando Hudson. 3 balls and a strike.
I believe Hudson re-signed with the White Sox. And he's bounced around a little bit like Jeff Suppan. Played everywhere.
They have Amarista that's beginning the bulk of the playing time. Everett Cabrera, both those two were the combination up the middle at AAA. The strike, and it's 3-2. Padres have had 39 different players appear in a game this year, and that's the highest total in the big leagues. There's Matt Palmer last night, the righty from the state of Missouri.
Something about the command and the confidence of the fastball for Lance Lynn that still isn't 100% there. A 3-1 curveball to a left-handed batter hitting 176 for the Padres tells me he doesn't have that overwhelming confidence that he once had with his fastball.
And now the bases are loaded. You just hope that that potential inning-ending double play doesn't come back to haunt Lance Lynn. And it brings in Cabrera. Still looking for his first hit since being added to the major league roster for the Padres.
And he'd like to do it with his boyhood idol at the ballpark. Cardinals shortstop Rafael Furcal. Cabrera, born in Nicaragua. There's his favorite player.
And Furcal is from Loma de Cabrera of the Dominican Republic. So the bases are loaded. Single, hit by pitch, a strikeout, fielder's choice, a walk, and now the 8th place hitter with the bases loaded. Grounded out to second, first time up, and takes a strike.
Furcal is only 34. At some point, players start hearing guys say, hey, when I was a kid, I used to watch you play. And, you know, you don't really want to hear that fully. You appreciate the compliment.
That's strike 2. Did you ever face a boyhood idol or a guy that you watched?
Oh, yeah, many of them. I pitched to what? I pitched to a guy that I loved watching play, Carlton Fisk. I got to play with Carlton Fisk, who was a World Series hero. A World Series, a playoff hero. And pitched against Mike Schmidt.
Swing and a miss. Strikeout for Lance Lynn. Cardinals baseball on Fox Sports Midwest is brought to you by MyKiaSt.Louis.com. And right now at Jack in the Box, you can try the new Chicken Club combo for just $4.99 plus tax. Jim Hayes is with us. Rick Horton alongside. I'm Dan McLaughlin. Nightfall here in St. Louis and Busch Stadium. Jeff Suppan back to work, and David Freese will lead it off. But David Freese got to St. Louis, Rick. He had just completed his 2nd season in the minor leagues in San Diego. And when the trade hit the fans and us, we said, wait a minute. Cardinals just lost Jim Edmonds. There was nothing really mentioned about a hometown kid, David Freese, coming back to St. Louis.
And when you first started hearing his name, the prominent thought was, oh, well, we just got a guy that
a throw-in
that has a St. Louis tie, so that's a nice story.
Well, it turned into a nice story.
I will say so.
Skip Double-A all the way to triple. And there's a ground ball that's backhanded. Nice play. Freese digging and out at first. That's a heck of a play down at third by Headley. Saw Perino last night at third base, and tonight it's Headley who robs David Freese. Very fine play here.
Yeah, a lot of things work well here. The backhand #1, then the throw. He keeps it low. 1 hops. Nice dig by Alonso, who has 5 errors, by the way, for a first baseman. That's quite a few. Look pretty smooth on that. I think that's key for an infielder to know. You always have to keep the throw low in a play like that. And I think the old school guys learned on AstroTurf how valuable that could be, because you'll get that little skip on Astro. But if you throw it high, that's where the ball sails. If you're going to make a mistake high or low, make it low. And trust your first baseman.
Game 7 back in '06. It was Oliver Perez who made the start against Jeff Suppan. Would wind up being the last playoff game ever at Shea Stadium. Cards went on to win their 17th National League pennant. And that's knowing who's at the plate. Backing up on that play, the shortstop, Perino, to make the play. Friday night, it's This One's For You. It's our annual telecast to the troops overseas. Linked to the Army soldiers from Missouri in Afghanistan. This One's For You. That's this Friday on Fox Sports Midwest. There's so many great moments, Rick, going back to 2006. You know, Wainwright in that final inning had given up singles to Valentin and Chavez, who had made the play of the year defensively. robbing Scott Rowland of a home run, which would have gone down if they win the game as one of the greatest postseason catches in history, because it was New York, because it's Game 7, and you win, but they didn't win. Adams with a fly ball out to right and hits it to the wall. But Wainwright would walk LaDuca, bases loaded, and strikes out Beltran. The MVP of that series, Jeff Suppan. All tied up. It's a 3-3 game. Both pitchers ran into problems in the first. 5 hits aside and 3 runs aside. A strike to Suppan. Grounded out first time up. Jeff was talking the other day about coming back and pitching here at this ballpark in St. Louis. And Ricky mentioned that as a player, and he has bounced around, he said you would look into the seats and the generations, grandpa to a father to a son, of people that teach the game. And he said the fans here just understand the game. They appreciate the effort. Neat place to play.
And when you're talking to a guy who's played in multiple places, that compliment means a lot more.
Exactly.
It's one thing to say that if you're a Cardinal and you've only had this experience, but when you bounce around a little bit and you realize just how true that is. And I don't think anybody currently playing the game would understand that better in terms of the fan connection, because that's the kind of guy he is anyway, Dan. He cares about that, as you say. So he's very aware of kind of the things around the game, Jeff Suppan. So I would take that compliment to be a very high one.
Suppan is 0 for 2. Back to the top of the lineup, and Will Venable.
One of the things I always liked about the Cardinal fan experience is, you know, they're not just fans of the hometown team, but I've always felt that there was a knowledgeable crowd that was fans of baseball in general. So if somebody here is having a big moment, remember Ken Griffey Jr.'s, I believe it was his 500th home run.
It was.
And it happened here on Father's Day with his father at the ballpark, and the applause was deafening. And, you know, to me, that's where you got to understand you're a fan of the game. If somebody's pitching a no-hitter or even just a complete game shutout going into the ninth, applauding for the other team's pitcher, I think that's a sign that you love baseball. It's not a sign that you aren't rooting for your team. It's that you understand baseball when it's being played well.
Most recently, I remember Randy Johnson coming through wearing a San Francisco Giants uniform and closing in on 300 wins. And Venable is 3 for 3. He's thinking too, hustling out of the box, and it's bobbled just a bit and misplayed. And with the speed of Venable, he winds up at second base. It's not an error, it's ruled a double, and Venable was hustling all the way.
Holiday bobbles it a bit. And with a stand-up double, it looks like he might have been able to get there anyway. It wasn't a very long time that Holiday was bobbling that ball. They probably could have given him an error, but good hustle either way for Venable. He's having a night.
You just mentioned Ken Griffey Jr. Maben had a chance to meet one of his idols right before he signed. And at the time, it was Ken Griffey Jr.'s agent. And then, as you well know, Rick, wound up being an advisor, quote unquote, before you're drafted. So you're not called an agent, you're the family advisor. So
right,
that's how Maben was hooked up with Ken Griffey Jr. A fly ball out to right, drifting back. It's Beltran to make the catch. And Venable will tag up from second to third. Friday night. Don't forget about the Budweiser Championship beer stein, and also your former teammate Vince Coleman will be signing autographs out in the Ford Plaza, and that will be Friday night. Cal Loesch against Cliff Lee.
If you thought of the most exciting Cardinal players of the last 20 years and you took a list of maybe the 5 most, I don't mean the best players, I mean the most exciting players, Vince would have to be in the top 5.
No doubt.
On most people's list.
Vince Coleman and Ozzie Smith, Terry Pendleton, Willie McGee, and the speed of those teams. Tommy Herr, such a great player. Here's Yonder Alonso with 2 outs and a runner at third. Alonso with a ground ball to the second baseman. And that's Green. Home half of the 4th coming up. Ask the Expert is tomorrow night, and it's brought to you by Jack in the Box, hosted by Chris Duncan. Ask the Expert at foxsportsmidwest.com. Look at Mike Matheny. He's from Reynoldsburg, Ohio, the suburb of Columbus. And we talked a little bit about his son and the potential of Tate being drafted by the Cardinals, and I asked Mike the other day about his own experience in the draft, and he had a pretty good story. He said, you know, here I am drafted by Toronto. Pat Gillick got involved because they really thought as the process went along that I should definitely sign, and Mike eventually did not and went to Michigan. So a guy that is from just outside Columbus winds up going to Michigan. Feat in itself. But he said maybe it was a bad omen that I decided to go to college, because on my way to my first class, a bird decided to, well,
I've heard that story. I know what birds do.
Birds sometimes do those kind of things. You know, they,
What if it was a cardinal?
bird droppings, if you will. And so that bird decided to drop on Mike on top of his head on his way to his first class, but he also, in that first class, met his first wife and only wife. And they've had 5 kids.
That's a day of kind of ups and downs. You can make a movie out of that.
Well, yeah, you have the bird do its thing, and then all of a sudden you meet your wife.
She must have had some pity on him, probably.
So it wound up being a pretty good deal, I guess.
I'll say so.
What makes you think twice, though? You know, should I do this? And all of a sudden, man, oh man.
Well,
The
and
hits just keep on coming, so to speak.
well, and we know that athletes tend to be very superstitious, looking for signs all the time. I think Mike Matheny has made a lot of right choices.
The 2-2 to Green.
And I'm sure Mike is breathing a lot easier now than he was 4 or 5 days ago, as things started to get kind of bad all in a hurry. The injuries, the team wasn't performing well, the bullpen, the starting pitching wasn't as deep, and things are a little bit better right now.
3-2. Green shoots it into right. That ball is foul. But the real point of that story, though, Rick, was the fact that he questioned, you know, whether or not he was doing the right thing, and is he walking away from his dream, which was to play professional baseball. And his son will be faced with that question here in a couple of weeks. The Cardinals have 6 of the top 70 picks, and they have also the 19th and the 23rd overall pick. So this winds up being a very important draft. Dan Kantrovitz is now the head man of the draft. He's a St. Louis native, played in the Cardinal system with Jeff Luhnow, now running the organization with Houston. But anybody will tell you that's how you're going to win. Restocking the prospects, and the Cardinals picked up all those picks with the compensation, the lost contract of a guy like Pujols, and Dotel was another one. Edwin Jackson, who's pitching tonight, that was another one. They picked up a pick. So here's Lance Lynn.
It's a bunt situation, but it's also a steal situation. So the question here is, do you let him steal second, then bunt him to third? Or do you just go ahead and bunt him to second to begin with? Most of the time, most teams will opt on bunting the runner over.
Lynn did not show it there.
And that sign to Jeff Suppan was come set, hold, 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 and step off, just to see if Lynn would show it.
Little bigger lead by Green. He's not running, and Lynn gets the bunt down. The sacrifice is good. Sack 3-4 on the play, and we're back to the top of the lineup. By the way, we should mention, just to finish our thought on the draft, Ryan Franklin, the former closer, will be a part of that MLB draft room and phone in the picks for the Cardinals. Speaking of Big Mac land, all day tomorrow, local McDonald's restaurants say thank you to their customers with a buy one, get one for 24 cents. It's a deal on Big Macs or quarter pounders with cheese. Here's for Cowell, top of the lineup for St. Louis.
Lance Lynn did not show the bunt early, but he does square, has the bat head above the handle, which is appropriate style for getting the bunt down, and deadens the ball to the right side, which is also appropriate. Nice job helping his own cause. Still would like to see Tyler Green just swipe that base first. It's taking a chance, Dan, but you almost negate the speed of Tyler Green by not letting him run. Doesn't get thrown out very often. Suppan is very slow in his delivery to the plate, mostly because of the velocity of the pitch. So why not give him a chance?
Taken low, 2 balls and a strike for Cowell with a bloop base hit into right. Scored a run in the first and also flied out to right. More of a liner last time up. So in your opinion, in a way, you're wasting that out. If you're going to give it away, wait and let him have that chance.
And you would only say that when you've got somebody who can absolutely fly on the base pass.
So 87 the high according to our gun, 67 the low for Suppan tonight. Stirring again in that Padres bullpen, but no throwing yet. We did see some action in the first inning.
87 high, 67 low. That sounds like a nice day in San Diego.
The 3-1 is a ground ball, and a diving stop at short for Cowell is out. His counterpart at short tonight, Perino, back at it again. Nice play. Looked like he was trying to keep Green close to the bag at second, and then getting back in position. He had to retrace his steps, so to speak, and get back over to make this play.
Bud Black told us yesterday that the Padres defense isn't bad. We're suffering right now because of bad defense early on, but of late our defense really has improved, and we've seen signs of that the last couple of days. Perino especially. Add that to the play Headley made early on and really helping out Suppan.
This is a little bouncer to second, and Schumacher is retired. 6 is a serious number, and if the Cardinals score 6, any size drink is just 50 cents all day tomorrow at your nearest On the Run It mobile. This year, 6 is a serious number. A 3-3 game as we move to the top of the 5th here at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Guzman, Headley, and Hundley against Lance Lynn. In his mind, and for a lot of people there at the ballpark that day, Rick about 1 pitch away from franchise history. He had a 10-pitch at bat against Jason Hayward a few Sundays ago. Hayward would drive in 3, and that prevented Lance from going to 7-0. He would have been the first St. Louis pitcher to win his first 7 starts, dating back to all the way in the 1920s. And he's been that good this year. Seeing him strike out batters, nothing new for him. He's got 3 tonight. Set the single season strikeout record 2007 at Ole Miss. Career strikeout record at that time as well.
Been a bit jumpy to the plate. That last fastball, an indication of that, where he just kind of jumped at the plate and pulled it across the zone. He has a couple of walks and a couple of hit by pitches tonight, so the command has been erratic for Lance Lynn here tonight. Not quite as smooth.
And remember, last year he was hurt. The famous oblique strain, 60-day DL, and wasn't even eligible to pitch until the first day of the National League Championship Series. And what a difference he made as he looks back into the home plate umpire, and it's a leadoff walk to Guzman. He's on base for the 3rd time. Twice he has hit him, and now the walk. Third baseman Chase Headley. Go back to last year, and the Padres were 20 games below 500, but yet they were outscored by only 18 runs and still finished 20 under 500. Bud Black, 7 years as a pitching coach for Mike Scioscia, and now in his 6th season at the helm of the San Diego Padres.
It usually means losing a lot of 1-run games, and it usually means problems in the back end of your bullpen. Very interesting how Guzman is getting his lead at first base. He is really kind of almost waiting, and at least he has for a couple of pitches before Lynn actually gets his pitch and gets started, and then kind of gets a late lead, and just doesn't seem like much of a lead. He's a threat to steal.
And here's a fly ball out to right center field. Beltran is over and makes the catch, gliding to that baseball. Not running all that well, but still makes the play. Well, Bud Black played 15 years in the big leagues and was part of the 1985 Royals that beat St. Louis.
Pitching in Game 4 of the '85 World Series. That's Tito Landrum, going deep the other way. One of my favorite teammates. Tito had an outstanding postseason, and Willie McGee, everybody remembers. And you'd certainly have him on that list of 5 most exciting Cardinal players in the last 25 years.
You bet. Here's Nick Hundley. So Vince Coleman will be here on Friday night, and that is not Vince Coleman, but that's his jersey. Get John Tudor in for a Busch Bash. He'll be in later this year, we hope.
McFan was sporting the powder blue jerseys, which became almost kind of a retro fad here in St. Louis. In style, out of style, in style.
Bud Black was talking about Nick Hundley at the plate, who had career highs in just about every category last year. He started 73 games. But they like his defense. He threw out 32 of 57 last year. Very impressive. And his dad, the college football coach, most recently at UCLA. He's been the defensive coordinator at some of the top programs in the country. Nick was saying the other day that the family jumped all over the place, 6 different states when I was growing up. So you rely on family in those kind of spots.
Life of a coach.
You got it.
Wonder how many,
one strike.
Wonder how many rental agreements Jeff Suppan has had to sign.
Or you just stay at the Marriott in
You could do
Omaha.
that. You could do that.
1-1 pitch. Hit out of play. One of the things that Bud was talking about defensively with Hundley, maybe we can point it out here with Molina. He said they really worked on him absorbing the pitch, trying to be quiet behind the plate, not stabbing at it. And that is something that will sell a call to a home plate umpire. We see that a lot with Yadier Molina. A fly ball. Right field. Beltran makes the catch.
There's so many little things about this game, and we try to kind of bring kind of the basic things about the game as the pitcher has to throw strikes, and you know the catcher has to put down the sign, and the batter's got to center the ball. But the catcher probably has more intricacies than any position in terms of framing the baseball, dealing with the pitcher psychologically, knowing the other team's hitters' attack area and the area to stay away from. When you get messed up on signs, as San Diego did last night, I mean, that shouldn't continue to happen, because it means somebody doesn't know what you're trying to do. They don't know the game plan. The catcher has to know it.
Big bats coming up. Big inning for Soup. Holiday, Beltran, and Freeze. It's 3-3. Right-hander Joe Blanton tomorrow night against Jake Westbrook. And that's our Budweiser What's on Tap. Blanton and Westbrook, the Phillies in town for the first of 4. The end of his Cardinals career, you didn't see Soup go very deep into games. And usually around this time, very watchful eye, Dave Duncan and Tony La Russa, as to whether or not they keep in Jeff Suppan. This could be a telling inning for him with Holiday, Beltran, and Freeze.
And he's been either 5 or 6 innings so far this year for San Diego, really no more than that. And that's not really a matter of the stamina of Jeff Suppan. That's not really the issue. It's, you know, he's really doing it with some smoke and mirrors, and you can only do that for so long. And that's the reality of pitching with a little bit of a diminished fastball, but he just knows how to pitch. But sooner or later that catches up to you, and if he can get a solid 5 innings or 5+, I think if you're Bud Black, you got to be happy with that.
He's allowed 5 base hits, and all of those were in the first. Holiday has lined out to short, and he's also walked. The other day, Suppan, with some of the members of the media, was asked, so I guess you were more of a mentor in the minor leagues last year? And he said, I don't like that word. He said, I still compete. You know, those guys are my teammates. Holiday rips it for a base hit. He said, I really struggle with the idea of thinking that I'm a mentor. He said, I'm still trying to get people out in the big leagues.
That's an interesting comment from Soup. That pitch is down and in, and I don't think he's saying he doesn't care about the development of those guys, but it's not his first and foremost thought, which I think makes a lot of sense. Is, you know, I'll show you how to play this game by you watching me, as opposed to sitting in the back of the bus with a 21-year-old every night telling them why they got to stop going out at night and why they have to stop not working hard, etc. I mean, let me just compete and I'll show you. Competition will actually make the other guys better. If you work hard and you pitch well, then the other guys are going to have to keep up with you.
Beltran fights it off, and strike one.
Baseball is such an odd game, Dan, in the fact that we've been around players for so long that we see it. They really are very individualistic in a lot of ways, and it is an individualistic sport in many ways, played as a team. Right now, it's just two people that matter. It's Beltran and Suppan, and the rest of us are watching, including all their teammates.
This is hit down the right field line. Will it stay fair? It is out of here. Cardinals go on top. Beltran with a long fly ball down the right field line. It hugs the foul pole. It stays fair. Number 14 for the Cardinals right fielder, and it's 5-3.
Beltran goes through the line. The sweet swing of Carlos Beltran.
From that side of the plate, he just drops the barrel, doesn't he? Smooth. Freeze looks at a pitch in the dirt, 2-0.
Nissan drive of the game. The sweet swing of Carlos Beltran.
That is why you ask him to be as careful as he needs to be to stay in the lineup. You need that production. You need his bat. 3-0 on David Freese. 5-3 Redbirds.
One more look. Smooth swing with extension. And Dan, you're absolutely right. There's going to be moments where Carlos Beltran is not going to run a ball out hard, not going to dive on a ball and hit in right center field, and I think that's Cardinals need him to do that. They need him to. They cannot afford right now for him to be hurt. And the trick will be, how do you give him enough days off? There may be some late inning, last 3 innings, let somebody else play right field. But you don't want to do that in a game that's close, because you need his bat in the lineup.
First down here in the home half of the 5th. Remind you that Fox Saturday Baseball is in prime time this weekend. Baseball night in America. The Phillies and the Cardinals. 6 Central, presented by Chevrolet. And this Saturday, it's Garcia and Kyle Kendrick. We are learning more about Carlos Beltran, and we're finding out what a class act he is. As Molina hits it to short, but one of the first things that he did, Rick, was he requested to go speak to the minor leaguers of the Cardinals during spring training.
I love it when guys do that. I've seen the power of that. I've seen not only players, but Cardinals actually had Jim Leland, before he went back to Detroit, go over and speak to all the minor leaguers. And I'm telling you, I was there for that, and it was really, they were spellbound by him because there's the influence there where, or he's where they want to be. And Beltran understands that as a major league player, that these guys are aspiring to have the same kind of experiences that he's had, and he knows the opportunity to influence. And I've heard Adam Wainwright speak to all the minor league players before, and I just love that, especially when they want to go to it.
There's Matt Adams. Picked up his first major league RBI in the first inning. Hit one to the wall and right.
I will say that many different feelings about Albert Pujols and where he is now and him leaving the Cardinals, but that is a void as well. Albert used to spend hours and hours with the young Latin players in spring training. He'd come early, come an hour early, and meet with all of the players and talk to them about how to be a big leaguer. And he spent a lot of time doing that. So there's a little bit of a vacuum there, and perhaps Beltran was trying to fill that.
He's gone now, and big shoes to fill, no doubt. But Beltran, you just saw that shot that Tom Mee, our director, has been giving us of Carlos visiting with Tony Cruz and Rafael Furcal. 1-2 pitch. Just teaching right there. You can just tell that they're going over Suppan a little bit. Also about the swings. It's John Jay. A 2-2 pitch. Opposite way. It's well hit. And this ball is off the wall. Adams with some opposite field power. And into second base as he rumbles on in. His second hit tonight.
Talked about his opposite field power potential, and there you see some of it. Pitch off the plate away. Talk about a simple swing.
Yeah.
Matt Adams also not a lot of wasted movement.
And Rick, in talking with the folks in Springfield and down in Memphis, they mentioned his lack of a stride. He's such a big guy. He's strong and very simple, compact swing.
Like watching those guys studying that, talking about that. And really interesting to see those three sitting there too. You've got John Jay of Cuban descent, and you've got Beltran from Puerto Rico, and Furcal, who no longer is in a picture, from the Dominican Republic. And just interesting the way kind of come together. I'm sure that conversation was in Spanish. You become fast friends when you're teammates in baseball.
Will this be it for Suppan if he can get Lance Lynn? Would they just be satisfied with the 5 innings? Bud Black will have Suppan's spot due up in second. That's going to be it right now, it looks like, as he will go with the double switch. Interesting to have him walk to get to Lynn and then go right to the bullpen. You don't see that very often with the pitcher coming up, do you?
No, I'm surprised, and I did think this would be his last hitter, but I thought he would at least have a chance to get Lynn.
So Chevy call to the pen. We'll tell you about it when we come back. Return of Jeff Suppan here to Busch Stadium. It's 5-3. Cardinals baseball is brought to you by AT&T, the nation's largest 4G network. AT&T, rethink possible. Miles Michaelis, a Jupiter High grad. So I'm sure he has stopped by the spring training facility of the Cardinals and the Marlins. He's the new pitcher in relief, and Emerista takes over part of the double switch. He'll be at short. 23-year-old is on the mound. So runners at first and second, and Lynn bounces it to short. Force play at second. Closes the book on Jeff Suppan. Cardinals have their first lead. It's 5-3. Coming up on Sunday, June 17th, the Cardinals take on the Royals, and kids ages 15 and younger entering with a ticket receive a collectible pennant that will highlight the Cardinals' new manager, Mike Matheny, courtesy of Coca-Cola and the Pasta House. Cardinals.com to get your tickets, as Carlos Beltran has given the Cardinals a 5-3 lead with a 2-run homer. Beltran with his 14th home run. RBIs 36 and 37. Rick is active on Twitter, and I guess it was tweeted back at you, Rick.
Yes, it was.
Make sure you tell Dan there are ladies that are fans as well. I mentioned passed down from generation to generation, son, father to son, grandfather to father to son. Well, there are daughters too, and grandmas and moms. So
you bet there are, and I knew you knew that, Dan.
I would never leave out the ladies.
Absolutely.
And you being a ladies' man would not let me forget it.
I've got nothing to say.
Well, I will tell you, Jeff Suppan, his line is 4 2/3, 5 runs, 8 hits. He walked 4, 1 was intentional, 1 strikeout, and 1 home run allowed. 1 ball, 1 strike here on Cabrera, and that's a base hit past the diving Green.
I will say that the game of baseball and love of sports was instilled in me by my parents, but most notably by my mom, who is recovering with my sister in Bentonville from a short illness, and she's doing great. But she taught me a lot about baseball, and when I would go visit my family during off seasons, if I had to play catch to work on some things, I'd play catch with my mom.
So many times when Al is doing the games, he says about the major league players that come from families that had a dad that was the major leaguer. He says, well, they learned baseball from the moms. It's the moms that have to play catch and throw BP and take you to practice.
No question.
All the different things that go along with that.
Well, it's what we learned about the guy on deck, Will Venable. It was really his mom, who was a college basketball star, that convinced him to play baseball instead of basketball.
Holiday makes the catch, and there's 1 away. Victor Marte is getting loose.
You are officially exonerated on Twitter.
And what is your what's your name on Twitter?
Ricky H49.
Let's get you some followers.
Let's do it.
Ricky H49. A strike to Venable, and Will Venable has had his way with Lance Lynn tonight. Second pitch of the game, hit a home run. He singled in the second and a double in the fourth. Seventh round pick out of Princeton, and this time Lynn will win that battle. It's popped up on the infield. David Freese makes the catch. Well, pitch count right now is at 90. And for a guy coming back from surgery like Wainwright, it seems like we're always focused, Rick, on the pitch count. But when you look at the 2009 minor league player of the year in Lance Lynn, he's never pitched more than 164 innings in a season, and you wonder if that's in the back of Mike Matheny's mind and how much you want to push him throughout the year.
I think it always is with a young pitcher. The Cardinals certainly felt that way about Jaime Garcia when he first came to the big leagues. You thought, okay, here's a guy that actually had some arm injuries in the minor leagues, so we want to be careful about total number of innings. And you know, I think there's probably maybe too much worry about that, frankly, in baseball now. Nolan Ryan's taking the game back in the other direction and saying, hey, I'm going to let my guys throw. Even in the minor leagues, that's the way you build up arm strength. But I think the real key is how many of those innings are thrown within his normal mechanics, where he's solid and The delivery's good. Wainwright last night as an example. Say, well, he's coming off arm surgery, Dan. Maybe he shouldn't go 9 innings, but he was so smooth yesterday that it was an easy 9 innings.
Remember, Lynn is in this rotation because he is out, and that's Chris Carpenter. I worked a function for the season ticket holders yesterday, Rick, and our special guest was the assistant GM, and that's Mike Gersh, and he said that there is no timetable on the return of Carpenter, but they do expect him at some point to pitch this year. He has been working out. He's been running an awful lot. They say he's in great shape. It's just a matter of getting the strength back up in the shoulder and getting him back on the mound. Gets to the ballpark early. About 1 o'clock he'll be here at Busch Stadium and running the stairs.
Well, part of the problem of being on the disabled list is if you're going to get rehab, you got to get here early. That's part of the deal. The everyday players, the guys playing every day, they get kind of the last call in the training room because they've got to play today. So you don't want them to be here at 1 o'clock for treatment that is going to be necessary for them to play at 7. So the guys who are on the disabled list have to get here early, do their work, and Chris Carpenter's a get here early guy anyway, and a hard worker.
One 1-0 here on Cameron Maben.
And you just blew up my Twitter name.
We're going to continue to do that tonight. That's a strike. Maben was the centerpiece in the Miguel Cabrera deal. Also, Dontrell Willis was a part of that. He was the 10th overall pick in 2005 by the Detroit Tigers. Comes from a very athletic family. His dad was a minor league player. His cousin is Rashad McCants. North Carolina national championship team that played against Illinois for the NCAA title. We mentioned that Maben is the first since Jake Peavy in 2007, Rick, to really get that long-term extension handed out by the organization. They gave him a 5-year deal. Ownership is in a state of flux right now, that they feel that last year was a breakout season for him. He possesses very good defensive ability, speed, power. They like him.
When the team is down, you have to be very judicious about giving long-term deals to anybody because you cannot afford to miss. Team's down, you make a big commitment to somebody, you're not going to get the immediate gratification of getting the money back because of being in the playoffs, etc. So you're taking a bigger risk than a team like, let's say, the Cardinals or the Yankees or the Red Sox, who've got things going in a good direction. So you can miss every once in a while, but the Padres can't miss.
When Alfonso Soriano, there was talk of being able to pick him up in the prime of his career, and a lot of teams thought this is the next great player in Soriano. Dave Dombrowski thought so highly of Maben. He publicly stated, he said, I wouldn't trade this guy straight up for Alfonso Soriano. That's how big of an upside Maben, in my opinion, has. And there's a base hit to left, and that's saying something.
Sure is.
It brings in Yonder Alonso, who was part of the Matt Latos deal.
Though Soriano may be the example that I was just talking about of making a long-term commitment while your team is down, and now you're kind of stuck if you're the Chicago Cubs dealing with his contract.
Alonso is stuck behind Joey Votto in Cincinnati. Yasmani Grandal was also part of that deal. He was the 12th overall pick in 2010. Very highly thought of catcher. Alonso is a 25-year-old from Cuba. His dad was a coach for the Cuban team at one point. They moved to Miami when Yonder was 9. And as he explains, his entire family lived in basically one room. Credits his parents as to why he is here and enjoying the freedoms of America and playing Major League Baseball. It's 5-3 St. Louis. Time now for our AT&T Reverse recap. Reading Ricky's tweets right now. Those are lovely. Lance Lynn, 6 innings, 8 hits, and 3 earned runs. Soup, 4 2/3, and Beltran, a 2-run homer back in the 5th. And I found the one that asks how you condition your hair, or if you do, because it looks lovely, is my favorite tweet. And you can pick up Ricky's thoughts at RickyH49. RickyH49 on Twitter. So
we'll find out the answer to that question and many others.
That's good.
Oh, boy.
Michaelis, his second inning of work. He was able to get out of the jam last inning, and it's 5-3. Here's for Cowell.
It was a big at-bat to end the top of the 6th with Alonso. A couple of runners aboard. He's the hottest hitter, Dan. You always have to be careful about the guy that's hottest. And Lance Lynn has not been great tonight, but he's managed to keep the Padres scoreless since the 1st.
That's the pitch that Bud Black loves from this right-hander. They talk about this breaking ball. Eventually, they feel he's only 23. Could be one of the better curveballs when he hones it and he's able to locate it, but they say it is a big one.
Well, it's sharp. You can see it was sharp. That was up in the zone a bit, but still sharp.
Here's Schumacher, and he looks at a strike. It's Bud Black in the dugout for San Diego. There's a curveball. Older sister named him Bud, and it stuck. They used to watch Father Knows Best, the TV show, and the son was named Bud Anderson. So there you go. They always watched it, and sister said, I'm going to start calling you Bud, and it stuck. Bud Black.
I never knew that. You're making that up.
Nope. No, sir. At least the other names that she called him didn't stick. Strikeout of Schumacher.
You know, it's interesting that the advance of sabermetrics, and there's so many more tools now to analyze the game of baseball, and there's kind of a growing tool that we're still trying to understand that actually measures how much a ball breaks, what the percentage of the break is as it's coming to the plate. And I think that is going to get more and more popular, I think, as you start to understand what is it about his curveball that's so nasty. Now, I don't mean that one, because that one just hung right at the head of Matt Holliday, but it's how much it breaks in such a short period of time that makes it sharp, but gets underneath that one a bit and doesn't break at all.
And Ricky combined that. He has a low to mid-90s fastball. There it is at 94 miles an hour. And he was called up when Houston Street went on to DL, right shoulder strain, and they miss him because he would be their closer. So some pretty big names missing for Bud Black, and there's the curveball that misses in. At San Antonio, this right-hander was 1-1 with an ERA of 2.92. Ground ball to Alonso, and Holliday is retired. It's 5-3 midway through 6. It looks like that's all for Lynn. Let's turn to our trivia question presented by AT&T. Which pitcher has the highest career winning percentage at New Busch Stadium? It's Jeff Suppan. How about that? 11-4.
He's been our theme today, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. Another leaderboard that he shows up on. Speaking of Jeff Suppan, the lowest postseason ERA. How about this? When you think about all the greats and the teams that have made it to postseason play, and Jeff Suppan an even 3. And we focused tonight. I was leading you in the direction of 2006. Overlooked by me was also his start against Roger Clemens in 2004, with the entire season on the line.
And this list we're looking at now, I mean, there are a lot of lists you can be on the leaderboard of, but postseason play is a pretty important one. And the Cardinals have such a winning tradition, and he's been a big part of that. He'll always be a part of the Cardinals story, Jeff Suppan.
Chevy called to the bullpen, and the right-hander, Victor Marte. Guzman takes over. Lance Lynn, 6 innings. 3 runs, 8 hits, walked 3, 3 strikeouts, and a home run. So the first pitch to Guzman is a strike from Victor Marte. Happy birthday to Jessica Duff here at the ballpark with Steve and sons Dylan and Aiden. Happy birthday to Jessica. Numbers on Victor Marte this year. Ricky H 49 on Twitter. 1-1 pitch.
And these new folks are making me laugh.
I'm sure there's some very nice comments about our broadcasting skills.
It's all over the board. Let's put it that way.
Or lack thereof.
Very creative.
Here's the 1-2 pitch inside to Guzman. So it's a chance tonight for Lance Lynn to pick up win number 7 and go 7-1 if the bullpen can make it stick.
I'm not sure I've ever seen a batter get hit 3 times in one game, but I think we almost just saw that.
Yeah. Hit the first 2 times. First time was a fastball. Then in the third, it was a breaking ball. He was walked in the 5th. So on base 3 separate times.
Ron Hunt probably did that. Don Baylor maybe.
Ron Hunt, for the longest time, he still is in the St. Louis area. All-time leader in being hit by pitches. We're at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Glad you're with us on Fox Sports Midwest. Cardinals and Padres wrapping up their series. Cardinals looking for a sweep. They lead it 5-3. It's always interesting when you talk to a player or a former player that's now in management or in the dugout as a coach or manager, Bud Black being that, the influences and the guys that got him to this point. He said there's 4 that really had a major influence on him, 4 different people. And he said one was Dick Hauser because of his patience every day. He was the outstanding manager of the Kansas City Royals. John McNamara pitched for him in Cleveland. And he said the one great thing about John McNamara, he understood a pitching staff. Where some managers, if you're not a pitcher, they just don't understand ins and outs. Here's another chance for Schumacher. Hustling in and diving catch. Oh, what a play. Schumacher hustling in and diving in for that catch.
Skip lays out, catches it right off the turf. You have to catch it and then withstand hitting the ground and somehow hold on to the ball. Tries to get his other hand around it just in case. Very athletic play by Skip Schumacher.
And now it's Hundley. The other 2, before I was rudely interrupted with that great play, talked about Roger Craig. He said everybody is important to the organization. And he said from the ushers, front office players, everybody. And then the final guy was Dusty Baker. He said he always had the players' backs. He said if you take a little bit of all those guys, you probably have success.
So you'd have to think
Hundley.
You'd have to think if you get inside the brain of Mike Matheny, trying to understand what his answer to that question would be as a new manager, probably still developing. But he played for Tony La Russa for a very long time, so he almost has to have some of his traits in mind. I know that he spent a lot of time talking to Red Schoendienst during the offseason and Whitey Herzog and tried to pick their brains about, you know, what would you wish you would have known before becoming a manager in the big league, which I think is a great question.
An interesting name that he talked about, Tony Dungy. For Kyle deep in the hole, long throw. Just to make that close. Fine play and effort by Rafael Furcal.
But you would add Dave Ricketts to that list big time.
Blake Ducote will be the hitter, pinch hitter, the runner at first. He was called up when Mark Kotze went on the DL with a sore back. Out of Hickman High School. And he was officially the 13th player added by Bud Black with all the injuries. Made his major league debut last year for the Padres, 37 at bats, and hit 162. And a ground ball that's hit to short for Kyle is there. Sit back and enjoy this gem from Skip Schumacher. Time to stretch here at Busch. Right-hander Brad Brock is into the ball game, and this will be his 15th appearance. He was called up from AAA Tucson for the San Diego Padres. Lead is 5-3. Beltran's home run 2 innings ago, the difference in this game. It was a 2-run shot, and Beltran hit his 14th of the year, RBIs 36 and 37. If you'd like to be here in person next time your Cardinals take the field, just head to StubHub. Easy to find the seats you want to Cardinals action all season long. StubHub is the official fan-to-fan ticket marketplace of the Cardinals. 26-year-old right-hander, his second stint with the Padres, as he made his first career opening day roster this year. Then was sit down, and because of all the injuries, back up. Beltran, Freese, and Molina. It's our Chevy call to the pen. 5-3 in favor of St. Louis as Beltran hits it down the right field line and pulls it foul. We saw the gem last night of Adam Wainwright as Beltran is shaking his hand. Padres were the only team in the National League that did not receive a complete game as of last night. A season ago, they had 3 pitchers that went over 20 starts. 2 of them are gone. That's Latos now with Cincinnati and Harang with the Dodgers.
Stiff right leg, then he collapses and drives to the plate. Working downhill.
They lose Heath Bell, their closer that was just outstanding while wearing that Padres uniform. Mike Adams was traded. We know about him. Very good as you get a look at RBI leaders. And then Luke Gregerson. Cardinals used to have him. We talked about him last night as Beltran chases a pitch up. Wasn't nearly as effective at the end of last season. So you put that all together and it adds up to a year in which they're 71 and 91.
Yeah, your bullpen is so important. You make a manager look good when the bullpen is hot. And we saw that early on in this season with the Cardinals. The bullpen was the best bullpen in the National League for 4 or 5 weeks, and then they had their struggles and very difficult to put together strings of victories as the Cardinals did early on. So, you know, you live and die with your pitching, both your starting pitching and your bullpen. The hitting matters, obviously, but you got to pitch.
This helps. Long drive. Goodbye. Home run, David Freese. Back in the lineup tonight, and he picks up home run number 9.
Nice to see David not just get a base hit, but show his power in this game as well. And Cardinals need him to be productive, and he certainly has been tonight. And that home run's a big home run in this game, too, to give the Cardinals a 3-run lead.
Yadi pops it up. Foul territory. Playable. 2 away.
You know, there's some home runs that don't matter based on the score, as that young man caught that baseball. But this home run does matter. Nice play, young man. That's cool. Very cool.
I was talking with John Mozeliak the other day about David Freese and the trade that brought him from San Diego to St. Louis. And the deal as far as players had been agreed upon. But as many of us have talked about, we thought David was just a throw-in, and you know, you're giving them Edmonds and transition the organization. That's not the case. The Cardinals had an eye out for David Freese, and they actually threw in close to $1 million to make that deal happen. They felt he could be an outstanding player. They were right. Welcome back to Cardinals baseball on Fox Sports Midwest. Let's go to our studio with this Bommarito Sports Update.
Dan, thanks very much. Edwin Jackson in the net after the sweep of the Phillies tonight, but already up 3-0. Shane Victorino, the flying Hawaiian, hits a moonshot to right. Number 6 for Victorino. Phillies win it 4-0. Cole Hamels, the first pitcher to 7 wins this season. Dan, Rick, back to you at Busch.
And Hamels lowered his ERA to 2.17. Cardinals will not see him the 4 games this weekend. Mark Zepchinski takes over for St. Louis. David Freese has given the Cardinals a 6-3 lead. Freese with a pair of RBIs tonight. Really the sidebar of that game, Rick, tonight, Hamels and Bryce Harper. Remember, Hamels hit Harper, and that was in a game earlier this year, essentially saying, welcome to the big leagues. This is how I'm going to welcome you, by hitting you, and then admitted to it, which was the surprising part.
Well, it was the mistake part is what it was. I understand that there were reports that Harper was getting booed just because he got hit. That's Philadelphia for you. But I'm, for one, am very anxious to see Philadelphia play. You know, I just know how good they are, how good they can be. I have a lot of respect for Charlie Manuel. I always have. And the Cardinals are going to see some tough pitching in this series. And you mentioned it already, but I think the key matchup is Halladay and Wainwright on Sunday.
Here's Cabrera. 0-1 pitch by Mark Zepchinski. Remember, this time last year, Rick, it was Trevor Miller and Brian Talent, Raul Valdez. Those were the lefties and the choices out of the bullpen. And then they got Zepchinski, and that changed the complexion of the bullpen immensely. Base hit, pounded into the ground, and Cabrera's aboard.
I think he's done a nice job since coming to the Cardinal bullpen, solidifying the left side, as you mentioned. And there were guys that were serviceable for short periods of time, but I think he's got an upside and has a chance to be a Cardinal for a long time.
When the Cardinals got him, lefties were only hitting .159 against him in the American League as he came over from Toronto.
He's young. He has a good fastball. He has good command, good off speed. I mean, he really has a lot going for him. The ability to someday be a starter, perhaps, if that becomes a need. He's done some of that before. So, I mean, I just think he's a guy that is versatile enough that we may just see him in a Cardinal uniform for a long time.
As much as Tony La Russa would always love the matchups, when Zepchinski first got to St. Louis, we didn't see him all that much. And there were some reasons behind that later we found out from Tony, but it was the only left-hander there. And so in Tony's mind, he had to use him for that ideal spot. Then the Cardinals pick up Arthur Rhodes, who had been released by Texas. So the versatility of 2 lefties, and then that was it. Zipchinski was the guy, and they were going to use him a bunch. Matter of fact, first 15 games after he arrived, he only pitched 3 1/3.
There are teams that can survive for a long period of time, Dan, with just one lefty in the pen, but there aren't very many of those. I just think you're much safer if you can get 2 guys eventually, and the Cardinals aren't. I don't think they're done looking for somebody, and they would like to develop one. A couple of left-handers in the minor leagues are having decent seasons. Sam Freeman, we saw him in spring training. He's been elevated to the AAA level, and he's certainly a pitcher of the future for them. John Gast, thought of as more of a starter, but we saw him in spring training a lot. And then there's always trade possibilities down the road. I just think at some point you're going to have to address the fact that there's just one lefty in the pen.
And Marista has to protect the plate. 1 ball and 2 strikes.
Zipchinski has a bit of a 3/4 delivery, picks up the target, breaks his hand, drops down just a little bit, doesn't throw straight over the top, and that can be nasty on left-handers, because as you're standing in the left-hander's box, it looks like the ball's coming from behind you.
And a ground ball. Smart play by Zipchinski. Lets it go for the double play.
Zipchinski does a good job by doing nothing. Gets out of the way of the ball and lets Furcal do the work. And that is a reaction. It's a split-second decision, and it's also knowing where your infielders are playing.
And Zipchinski has talked about, his focus going into these appearances. Rick, he said, clearly a strikeout is a strikeout. It's a positive thing from his point of view. But he said, as much as I may be used, if I can get quick outs, ground ball outs, that can be so much more effective, because then the following day I'm a little bit fresher. And he knows, being the lone lefty, it's going to be a guy that Mike Matheny will say, let's go to him quite often.
Yeah, I actually believe that at some level there's some extra pressure and stress when you're the only left-hander, because you've got to think things just like you just said. Instead of just going out there and realizing it's, hey, if it's not my night, then it's the other guy's night. And you're not really hoping that it's the other guy's night. You want it to be yours. But when it's you every night in multiple different kinds of situations, maybe it's the strikeout in the 9th inning, or maybe it's the 4 left-handers in the 7th, and you're the guy they think of in both cases, it makes your job more varied. Now, he can do all those jobs, but it's hard to do them all at the same time.
Sure.
So I just think that at some point, Dan, you have to find another lefty.
The 2-2. Got him. Strikeout for Zipchinski. This copyrighted telecast is presented by the authority of the St. Louis Cardinals and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form. And the content descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without the express written consent of the St. Louis Cardinals.
6-3 Redbirds. They have managed the biggest blows in this game. Carlos Beltran and David Freese. Homers in the 5th and the 7th inning. Beltran's 14th, Freese's 9th. And Mike Matheny has a club that has some pop this year. Joe Thatcher, game number 17 for him, one of 2 left-handers in Bud Black's bullpen.
Ricky H49 to tweet to Ricky. Ricky H49. We're trying to pick him up at least 5,000 new followers, and this is Joe Thatcher. Nickname is the Throwin' Kokomoan.
I like the guy that tweeted a photo of you looking like Ron Burgundy.
Sweet. Kokomo, Indiana. Stay classy on Twitter. I enjoyed the various comments about your hair. Or lack thereof.
I guess.
Shane Robinson is on deck. You know, there is an Anchorman 2 coming out.
I did know that.
I will make sure that we get a couple of seats.
Look forward to it.
You and I together.
I'll buy the popcorn.
Thatcher pitched for Indiana State University. A Sycamore.
Kind of a Mitch Williams delivery there. Think about how off balance he is in that follow through.
I will not read from a prompter and repeat anything that Ron Burgundy may have said. That's a base hit for Tyler Green. Showing off his speed. He's at second. And he'll stop there. Leadoff double for Tyler Green. We're seeing that his confidence every day is starting to pick up a little bit here, Rick.
Absolutely. A lot of work with Mark McGwire. Get that swing changed a bit. Handle that inside pitch.
Things just got serious because the Cardinals have scored 6 tonight. Any size drink is just 50 cents all day tomorrow at your nearest On the Run at Mobile. This year's 6 is a serious number. And a strike to Shane Robinson. Adrian Chambers last night got the start in center field.
One point you thought that Shane Robinson would be a casualty. In fact, he was for a very short period of time and be sent back to AAA. But with a rash of injuries, become an important utility man on this team. Usually has a productive at bat and plays center field, runs well. And we've had a couple of folks ask about the newest Cardinal, Stephen Hill.
And he is a versatile player because he can play catcher, third, first, and the outfield, but hold that thought. Cardinals baseball is brought to you by Budweiser. Great times are waiting. Grab some buds. And by Taco Bell. Taco Bell. Live Moss. Stephen Hill.
Well, it's not only that about Stephen Hill. It's the fact that now you have an extra catcher, so you can rely on the versatility of Tony Cruz, who can also play multiple positions. And the reason you wouldn't do that with Tony Cruz, we've seen him play third, we've seen him play first. You might see some more playing time for him because he's not relegated to the just in case Yachty gets hurt role. And you can do that with Stephen Hill on occasion. Brian Anderson, a lot of folks had thought maybe he would get the call, but his batting average is really low in AAA. He had a nice spring training, but he struggled since opening day. There goes Green. Nice to have this kind of speed. Slides right to the bag, and we'll call him safe. Infield in for San Diego.
For Kyle, pops it up to the right side. Give chase, and it's out of play. Little floater, and it's foul.
McClellan. It's like some blue tape on his right arm.
Strikeout for Kyle. And there's 2 down.
I've seen a couple of plays in this series where there were some tags that were a little high and maybe not made as strongly and courageously as they should be. And here's another one where kind of a little swipe tag here instead of really getting the glove in front of the bag. And you just wonder whether players at some point just, we see so many players get injured, Dan, on plays like that, either wrist or catchers at the plate. Buster Posey, we know what happened to him, and play at the plate. Stephen Drew cost him a half a season with Arizona on a slide. And that's where the danger of the game comes in. And I don't say danger like terrible danger, but it becomes potential for injury. We saw that with Tyler Green sliding into Ellis in Los Angeles and the injury that happened with him.
We've been asked about Colton Wong. Would he be a guy that potentially would get a call up? And our understanding would be no. Even though he's played very well at Double-A. 331 in 39 games. Mott been getting loose as we head to the ninth.
6-3 Cardinals as we go to the ninth in St. Louis. Coming up after the game on the post-game edition of Missouri Lottery Cardinals Live. Pat Harris and Lil Dunker at Lumiere Place. David Freese got some time to rest and adjust. They'll break down his swing. A look at Matt Adams' stroke as well, plus Mike Matheny's post-game thoughts. Carlos Beltran has gone deep in this game. Cardinals lead it. We go back to the booth and Dan and Rick, guys.
David Freese, a big night. We'll have Jim on the field for a post-game interview. And the Cardinals looking for a sweep. David Freese with a home run. 2 for 4, 2 RBIs. Schnook's difference maker is David Freese.
And it's a difference maker inside his brain too, Dan, because he's had a couple of very long days watching his teammates play. He wants to be in there every day, and it's just great to see David contribute tonight.
Maben looks at a strike. Jason Mott pitched in game 1. They tried to give him a 4-out save. Didn't work out, but the Cardinals picked up the win. Yesterday, he was at least getting loose, Rick, and throwing in the bullpen, and now here he is again, that rubber arm of Jason Mott. Shane Robinson, center field. 1 ball, 1 strike on Maben. Has to play into the equation of how you manage a bullpen. Remember a few years ago, it was Marty Mason that actually counted how many pitches Jason Isringhausen would throw. Not just in the game, but getting loose in the bullpen. It was an amazing amount. And so now you have 3 days in a row that Mott has been up and throwing. It's fouled back.
I owe a lot of things to a lot of people in this game, people that taught me things. Bruce Suter's the one that taught me to not throw too many warm-up pitches, and he did it by coming and taking the ball out of my hand. There were a couple of times where I was warming up at the pen, and he literally did that. He said, "Stop it. You got to just stand here. You're going to get 8 more out there. Stop throwing."
A liner, and it's caught it short by Furcal.
Ball hit right on the nose. Furcal lays out. My favorite position defensively to watch are shortstops. The range they have, the athleticism.
Adam Wainwright talking about what Furcal has meant to this team and to that game last night. He's hit 2 errors this year. 0-1 pitch. Liner, center, Robinson, 2 away. He battled here tonight and trying to pick up win number 7. Lance Lynn is our Budweiser player of the game. 6 innings, 8 hits, 3 runs. They were earned. He walked 3 and struck out 3. It's a crowd of 40,715. 40715, and they're on their feet. Little tapper left side. The soft hands by Freese. What a play. Cardinals hold on for the win, 6-3, and they have a sweep over San Diego.
Very good defense in the 9th. Cardinals with enough offense to sweep this series. 3 runs in the first. They gave up 3 runs in the first, but Beltran and David Freese provide the power in the middle of this game to give the Cardinals the victory. Lance Lynn, the winner, as you said. He's our player of the game, and he just gutted it out to beat one of our favorites, Jeff Suppan.
6-3 the final. Phillies coming to town tomorrow. A sweep over the Padres. Post-game show next.
Cardinals sweep away the Padres over at Busch Stadium. Chris Duncan and I here ready to break it down at Lumiere Place. Well, forget about the problems they had in Los Angeles. 3 games over the Padres.
I'll tell you what, the last 3 or 4 starts, I keep expecting Lance Lynn to go out there, throw a complete game shutout, but I think this is more realistic of what we can expect out of him. Another solid start, 6 innings, 3 runs. Good job by Lance Lynn.
Gets to 7 wins on the season as well. More from Chris coming up. Plus, after being swept out west by the Dodgers, the Redbirds trying to bust out the brooms against the Padres, and they do. We'll tell you how they were able to do it. Plus, 2 nights, 2 phenomenal starting pitching performances. Lance Lynn makes it 3 for 3. We'll break it down, and Jeff Suppan's back. But was his Suppan word of the day superlative or pejorative? And we'll take you back over to Busch Stadium for Cardinal player reaction and Mike Matheny's post-game press conference. Happy World Turtle Day. Yes, it's actually a thing. Come out of your shells next.